Okay, so good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. My name is Barry Crosby, and I'm one of the communication officers for the Green Era Hub project. I'm delighted to be hosting the session this morning as part of our Career Pathways for PhDs and Early Career Researchers series. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce the Green Era Hub. The Green Era Hub officially began in September 2022 as a coordination and support action funded by the European Commission under the Horizon Europe programme. Today, the Green Era Hub represents a network of 15 EU ERA-NETs, co-funds, and self-sustained initiatives active across the agri-food and biotechnology sectors. Today, we work to strengthen collaboration, share knowledge, and support research and innovation right across Europe. As many of you will be familiar with our Breakfast Club series, which we launched here in October 2023. Since then, we've hosted 6 very successful series so far, ranging from circularity in agriculture and sustainable food systems to animal health and welfare. If you're interested in exploring any of these topics, our webinar recordings are now available on the Green Era Hub YouTube channel. Now, the series which continues today shifts focus somewhat from our previous investigation of scientific themes to that of career development. The idea behind the current series is to explore what lies beyond the lab, to highlight essentially the wide range of career pathways available to science PhDs and early career researchers, and to provide real grounded insights from professionals who have successfully navigated transitions across academia, industry, policy, and civil society. Okay, so today it's a real pleasure to welcome our 5th distinguished speaker in the series, Professor Claire Chenu, Director of Research at INRAE and Professor of Soil Science at AgroParisTech in France, where her research focuses on soil organic matter, a critical component of healthy soils that underpins essential ecosystem services and plays a key role in climate change mitigation and adaptation through carbon sequestration. In both her roles at INRAE and AgroParisTech, Professor Chenu is deeply engaged at the science policy practice interface, contributing to evidence-based decision-making and leading awareness-raising initiatives on the vital role of soils in sustainable development. In recognition of her leadership in this field, she was nominated Special Ambassador of Soils by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in 2015. She currently chairs the Scientific, Technical and Innovation National Network of Soil Experts and serves as Vice Chair of the Scientific and Technical Committee of the 4 per 1000 initiative. In 2019, Professor Chenu was awarded the Soil Science Medal by the European Geosciences Union and received the INRAE Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of her outstanding contributions to soil science. Today, Professor Chenu's talk is entitled Beyond the Lab, From Soil Research to Shaping Global Action for Climate and Sustainability, where she'll very kindly share some career insights with us all, as well as highlight some of the important career lessons that she has learned along the way. If you have a question for Professor Chenu at any point, please feel free to submit your question through the Q&A and chat function. Thank you all very much for joining us today. And with that, it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to you, Claire. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry, for this introduction, and thank you to Green Era Hub for trusting me. Okay, so I would like to share some personal reflections on my academic career, not as a model, but as a series of choices, collective engagements, and trade-offs, while remaining firmly anchored in research. It's not that easy for me, but careers are reconstructed a posteriori, and I do not feel entitled many times to give advice in a very general way. So I would rather present insights. I am a soil scientist. I was attracted to soil science because I was interested in both geology, the mineral world, and biology. And both are present and very strongly interact in soils. So I have even So I have specialized in this type of ecosystem and even specialized in bio-organo-mineral interactions at a very fine spatial and temporal scale. So I will start with presenting my journey. It's a long journey. I'm not an early career scientist. I'm really at the end of my career. So my training, PhD and early career were rather in fundamental soil science with a very strong attachment to mechanistic research. Then collective engagement actually came early. I became involved in scientific councils. I became a team leader and I became a research department leader. So responsibilities actually came before feeling fully ready for it. I several times said yes without realizing the long-term implications. And I remember, for example, when I accepted to become the head of my research unit, there was 40 permanent people at the time, and I was less than 40 myself. I felt that I had been thrown the deep end of the pool without knowing how to swim. But actually, and maybe that's what I think what was a good reaction from me is that I screamed for help. And INRAE decided to set a special training for director of research units. And I began part of the first trainee generation, but also I was part of the steering committee because I was one, I had been asking for it. So collective engagement and driven by curiosity, by feeling that I should do it because it was useful. And then there was, in fact, a change in context, national and international, that strongly affected my career. Soils gained visibility as well as climate, probably more about climate. And in France, as a chair of the scientific committee of our national research program on soils, I was increasingly exposed to non-scientific audiences. And 2015 was declared the International Year of Soil, and I was nominated one of the 2 world ambassadors on soils for FAO. So it was, really change of activity. And it was also the year of the COP21 in Paris. I was involved in the scientific preparation, and I became strongly involved in setting a new initiative, the 4 per mil initiative. So it was science becoming science in the public arena. Then I became the coordinator of a large European joint research program, the HAP soil. And it was clearly going from producing knowledge myself to organizing collective knowledge. And there was also an important activity at the science to policy interface, because we were in the context of the proposal by the Commission of a new directive, a soil monitoring and resilience directive, and we decided to really invest and become engaged in scientifically supporting this law proposal. Now it's accepted and just entered into force in December. So now the HAP soil just finished, and I would say that my activities relate to scientific governance and maybe global advisory role, again with the FAO, for example. And I'm still anchored in research, engaged in collective scientific leadership. So here is my simplified path, and as you may know, noticed the brown path that actually represents research always continued. I never stopped research. Of course, it became less important with time. I tried to represent it by making the line thinner, but it always continued to do some research and to advise, to be mentor of master students, of PhDs, of postdocs, just because I love it. I need it. It's my anchoring. So I would say my path is rather continuity rather than rupture. And also because the same values have driven me all the way along to do good science and to do collective science. Of course, it became increasingly interdisciplinary with increasing complexity and increasing exposure. So what really changed, what was not my scientific focus, but rather the scale at which I was operating. And about, yes, changes activities, I would like to focus on one example that I think really was going from personal research to collective science. I became involved in several expert assessments at the national scale, but also then at the international scale for the IPBES and for the Global Soil Partnership. Expert assessments, well, what you probably know, all of you, is the IPCC work. And I think it's really valuable because it mobilizes your knowledge as a scientist, your ability to organize knowledge, to evaluate the knowledge, and it's a teamwork to build a consensus, well, to build facts. Okay, we know this with this degree of uncertainty, the trend is this, is decreasing, is increasing. So I think it's really, well, an exercise I would encourage you, if you have opportunity, to participate to. It's not, doesn't mean changing career, but it's often a short in time, but it really allows you a different vision maybe of what you can do with knowledge. So beyond the lab also for me was learning to address broader audiences, and in particular at the science policy interface and in the context of one regulation on carbon farming that Europe has landed, and of the proposal, the negotiations, the revisions, the votes, and now the acceptance of the EU soil monitoring law. Now we are in implementation phase, so I still feel mobilized. And policy and science operate with different logics. They have different policymakers, and scientists have different constraints. Yet it's very important that they collaborate, that they interact, and that I found, especially in the HAP soil, that the learning, but also for the 4% initiative, that the learning process is really challenging for scientists. Because it requires that you understand policy needs. So as I said, they do not have the same needs that we have. Regarding knowledge development, there's a real timescale issue. They need answers within 1 week, while you would tell them, but this is should be a research project. We need 2 years. They also need to work on authoritative results. So they need to you have to identify them, to disseminate them. So there's a need for consensus, scientific consensus behind that. And I belong to a community, the soil science community, which I think has not much experience into building collective consensus. I think we're different from the climate community in that sense, for example. It also, another challenge for scientists is that we have to communicate complexity and uncertainty. And these, especially uncertainty, is something that is really not understood easily by people who are not scientists by training. And it's very important to convey these dimensions. And also it requires to go from knowledge into decision support tool. A policymaker, for example, does not only need to know what are the good indicators, but also with this indicator, okay, when is it red, orange, green? When should we promote action? And of course, it requires ad hoc dissemination. So that was really a learning process for me, and I think also for the teams of scientists I worked with. There were bridges. And I think I brought with me from the lab several things. Well, the lab trained me to deal with complexity, with uncertainty, with time. And these exactly were challenges also at the climate and sustainability, in climate and sustainability governance. Also bringing evidence before opinion. This is typically comes from out of research and long-term thinking. So in a sense, I brought this with me, and I have the feeling that I'm using the same skills, but with different people and at different scale. Everything was not easy, not at all. there were things I really underestimated. In particular, I underestimated the feeling of illegitimacy. I quite often felt I was not the right person at the right place. Still, I had to act. Um, I also underestimated the cognitive and mental load of coordination, the reduced time for research and writing. And there was, I felt, quite often a personal tension because there are roles I feel more or less at ease with. In fact, I'm much more comfortable as the chair of a scientific board than as a director of a large research program. I'm not a manager, I'm a scientific director. And these roles require different skills. So my choices were not always coherent. And well, the last case, for example, actually the solution was teamwork, working with people who had the competences I do not have and I do not want to acquire because it's not, I would disperse myself completely. Also, there were trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. You cannot optimize everything. Coordination, governance, science policy work are really time-consuming. They broaden your perspective, but they reduce your research focus. I know I could have published more. Sometimes I regret it, but most often I do not regret the choices I made. But well, I think anyhow, every career, every professional activity involves trade-offs, whether we acknowledge them or not. And I will end with, yes, some take-home messages, maybe. I think it's very important as a scientist, whatever you do, whether you want to become a researcher, to be a researcher all your life or to do other activities, it's important to build your scientific identity. There's no single profile of what is a researcher and what is a scientist. And that's really good because this diversity is very useful. I think it's important not to chase all opportunities. And for that, to take the time to reflect upon what really matters to you. So take the time to reflect upon your choices. Also, be aware of trade-offs. Time is limiting, engagement has cost. And again, I would say, take the time to reflect upon your choices. Lean to work collectively. Research is increasingly more collective. And I think listening, coordinating, working with are skills that we can develop. But working together is really powerful and working together is fun. I think it's really fun. And say, yes, we're humans. Human relationships are extremely important. And so it's important never to neglect them. And sometimes I felt I made choices that were maybe not the most glamorous, not the best. Yes, the obvious one, but at some stages I made choices because of the people I would have to work with. And this I never regretted. Enjoy your job. Of course, enjoy your job, whatever you do. And never forget, but I think that you all know that your life is much more than your job. And of course, the intensity of working activity varies with period of time. Well, I'd say the 15 years or so my kids were growing up, of course, I was working much less. And you do not need a perfect plan. I think it's not possible to know about a plan ahead. And on that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And maybe I'll stop sharing my screen.
Claire, that's great. Thank you so much for a really engaging and thought-provoking talk. I think you've given us a lot to reflect on there, especially around how researchers can recognize their individual strengths and navigate the many different opportunities that are available to them beyond the lab. And we've some time now for questions. So I'd love to open the floor to everyone joining us today. If you have a question, please do feel free to pop a question into the Q&A and chat box, which I've enabled for everyone. So we'll get through as many questions as we can before the end of this morning session. I think just to get us started, I might kick things off with a question or two of my own, Claire, if that's okay for you.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I mean, I was just kind of really struck by this kind of organic movement that you've described from the lab into kind of these very kind of technical leadership roles that you've occupied over and throughout your career. And I was just wondering, what early career experiences do you think most prepared you for leadership roles beyond maybe the lab, beyond academia, even?
Early career activities.
Or early
I think
career
it's,
experiences? Sorry.
yeah, working in a team and realizing that all scientists, all researchers are not, and other personnel in research, technicians, engineers, do not have the same competences, and that there's complementarity. So this is something I think I kept that all the time. And well, I think curiosity made me accept to be member of boards, of scientific boards, also quite early of a board that was evaluating careers, evaluating scientific activities of other scientists. That was, yeah, really useful. But I think initially it was really curiosity and the sense of what is useful for everyone, not only for me.
Thanks very much, Claire. You mentioned also the kind of key ability for PhD students and early career researchers to address broader audiences. That was kind of a
Mhm.
point that you really emphasized,
Yes,
a skill that's really needed if you
yes.
want to advance your career. And I was just wondering, what other skills do you think, and from your experience, would be essential for early career researchers who want to maybe influence policy or work in international initiatives?
I think still it's to be a good scientist, to do good science, to be really to care about evidence, not about opinions. What we're useful, I think, as scientists, because we're able to to put forward facts, even though, of course, the science evolves and something that has been the dominant um, thinking and facts used may evolve and may become wrong. But I I would say yes, still be rigorous, honest, rely on solid science.
Fantastic. And Claire, you've worked in many international networks and initiatives.
Mhm.
Do you have any maybe tips or advice on how early career researchers can begin to build global professional presence or networks?
Well, I think for networks and international presence, the most natural when you're a young scientist is going to conferences. Going to conferences. These are where you can meet other people. These are where you can listen to talks from other disciplines as yours or disciplines that are close by, so that just widen your knowledge, widen your perspective. Um, so I would say that. And yes, I think if you have the opportunity to participate to expert assessments, again, I think this is really, you learn a lot. Um, and you learn a lot, and it's not doesn't mean that you're going to leave research. That's something you can do. It can last for 1 year, it can last sometimes from less, but usually it's 1 2 years. It's, of course, it takes some of your time, but it doesn't mean that you're leaving research. So it's an additional experience. And I remember, well, I was involved in one when I was, I don't know, about 35 or so. And then thereafter, I suggested on 2 occasions, I suggested young scientists I knew to be selected as a junior experts. And for both of them, it really influenced their career. And I know that it completely opened their network.
Thanks very much, Claire. And what non-technical skills do you think have been most valuable in your career? Communication, negotiation, diplomacy. How can researchers develop these types of skills, do you think?
Hmm. Taking care of the others, I would say, and respecting. Yes. And yes, having personal values and trying to never forget them. Respect, trust, uh, friendship. So I'm sorry, it's very, what I say, it's very bland, but yeah.
No, no, not at all. Claire, just one or two questions coming in from the audience, if we may.
Yes.
A question from Rajiv. There are not many opportunities in soil science. Where can a person work after finishing their PhD?
Yes, there are not that many opportunities. I don't know if the question is about research or other jobs in soil science. Um, Research, for sure, there are not many opportunities, but it's like other disciplines, I think. It's still very competitive, and there are not as many opportunities in all countries. So sometimes it's unfair because your own country does not offer many positions and you have to go abroad. So I know that there's not equity in science in that, depending on where you come from. But I think that there are a number of jobs in soil science outside of academia. In particular, well, in fact, right now I'm in Quebec at a Sustainable Agriculture Conference in Quebec. That's why, sorry, I have said maybe not be very fluent, but it's middle of the night for me. And yes, I have discussed, I have listened, heard people presenting their work, and they are advisors, sole advisors. And this is a very important function. It requires very solid scientific knowledge. It requires quite a broad knowledge, the ability to understand the needs of the farmers, and sometimes the companies, the food companies or other companies you're going to advise. It requires that you learn all lifelong. So I think for me, it's very dynamic. And that's, for me, one quality of a job is when it evolves through time, you have to learn, so you do not get bored. So for example, this, I think, is one type of activity that is really needed in science. And data science for soil science is really evolving fast. And I see around me that there are new positions being offered. So yeah, I saw
Thanks very
that there
much,
was
Claire.
another
And
question.
yes, no problem. We just have another question coming in from a member of the audience. How advanced in your career were you when you joined your first advisory board? I just asked because I'm just after completing my second postdoc, and I'm not sure if it is too early at this stage. Also, should you wait until you get invited onto an advisory board, or should you try to actively seek these opportunities?
Good question. I think I was 33, maybe 35, 34. So in fact, I was lucky that I got a permanent position quite early, right after my PhD, in fact. And in my case, I never asked to be part of a committee, but I think I was proposed to be part of a committee because I expressed curiosity, interest toward these activities. So I would say, yes, go ahead. Ask, maybe not to be part of a committee, but ask, what are your objectives? How does it function? Ask to people who are involved. If you're curious about it, express this curiosity. And I think this really will happen. Maybe you can tell that, oh, I would love to learn how to work in a committee. I would learn to become involved.
Thanks very much, Claire. Just one final question just coming in from our audience. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for PhDs in sustainability and climate-related careers over the next decade?
There are so many challenges in this area, so many challenges. So I think that there will be, yes, big opportunities. And I think combining, there's a need at least, well, more for my own discipline, but there's a need. I know that there are increasing needs, I said, about data science. So ability to manage data and to work with it is increasingly needed. I think there are also a need for people at the interface between science and society. We are, and yes, maybe there will not be many positions in that area, but I think that we will really need scientists becoming involved at this interface. Well, you are aware that scientific truth is less and less considered. And we see politically how opinion based on whatever is becoming more important than facts. So here we will need solid trainings and ability to negotiate, to convey messages, to understand at this interface. And also one thing that I think it is well known, well admitted now, is that regarding adoption of sustainable practices, wherever it is, especially in agriculture, that adoption is not limited by the existing knowledge. Adoption is limited by access to the existing knowledge, understanding the existing knowledge, by difficulties, economic or personal difficulties to accept the risks that are associated with changing practices. And I think there is really a challenge, again, to work at interfaces between different jobs, different specialties, different competences. So, yeah.
Claire, thank you so much for that. It's just coming up on 25 to 10 here in Ireland. And I know we're very conscious, Claire, that you're joining us from an ungodly hour in Quebec. It's very early in the morning there, I believe. So we'll wrap things up and just thank you once again so much for joining us this morning and for giving us such insightful and such a generous presentation. It's been a real pleasure to have you, Claire. So thank you so much. And
so
to
much.
everyone, thank you. And to everyone who joined us, thank you very much for your time, your questions, and your continued interest in the Greener Hub Breakfast Club webinar series. Just a quick reminder that recordings from all our previous thematic series are available on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to explore any of those topics, previous talks, please do feel free to visit our YouTube channel. And we hope you'll join us again for the next webinar in 2 weeks' time on Thursday, the 26th of February, which will feature Dr. Kamaljit Morangnam, a scientist at Nofima, the Norwegian Institute of Food, Fisheries and Agricultural Research in Bergen, Norway, when he will be joining us to discuss what lies beyond the lab, from bioenergy researcher to sustainable innovation leader. Until then, thanks once again to Professor Claire Chenu and to everyone for joining us today. And we hope to see you all back with us again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day. Thank you very much, Claire, and have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.